All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Best Damn Podcast. I am your host, John Keene. Today, I've got a really exciting video. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and turn this music down and go ahead and just get it started right off the rip here. As a matter of fact, we're going to be looking at Edgar Cayce, the story of Atlantis, some of the books that we're going to be checking out today. And make sure if you're watching this live or you catch us on the flip side, please hit the thumbs up, give this a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think. I love to hear your guys' feedback, and share this link. It really helps me to get it out there. That way new people can find me. Follow me, Facebook, Instagram, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn, and all the links to all of the platforms and that good stuff is in the description box. And if you want to book readings and all that, that's also there as well. But like I was saying, today we have got a really good one. We're going to be looking at Edgar Cayce. We're going to be looking at the story of Atlantis. Some of the books we're going to be dealing with is Edgar Cayce's Story of Karma. We're going to be looking at the Law of One as well, and its connection to Edgar Cayce and some of his channeled messages about Atlantis. We're going to look at a book called The Sons of Atlantis, or Sons of the Law of One. You're going to see a lot of this and how it has many connections to the fallen angels, and kind of gives us an origin story as far as how we descended from primordial beings in the stars, heavenly beings, heavenly consciousness, when we were, in this primordial state, part of, the one, the all, right? And just like in the days of Egypt, you see all these depictions of half man, half animal, these deities and these gods. The story that we're going to hear today is going to talk about consciousness descending and meshing with animals. And that was like the original sin and the original entrapment of consciousness into matter, right? Which would be like the fallen angels. And that humanity was essentially started because it was like a rescue mission or something to go back and get these fallen brothers that were part of the all as well. I'm going to play some excerpts from this podcast that I've been listening to. It's called Edgar Cayce and the Children of the Law of One by Brian Scott. I will drop all the links and shit from all the stuff we're going to go through tonight. I'm telling you, it's going to be really fun, really cool. Hopefully I can get this thing to stop popping up on me here. And we're going to read a lot of the different channeled messages too from Edgar Cayce and from some of these other books as well that connect to the same topic. And we're gonna see what comes out here, and you can have your own take on this. A lot of people believe that some people believe, should I say, not a lot, some people believe that when you deal with like a channeled message or something, that it's coming from entities outside of ourself, and you're more than welcome to have that belief if you choose to believe that. If you think that people are talking to spirits or demons or angels or whatever it is, I really could care less what your belief is on that. I believe that we are talking to our higher consciousness when those altered states of consciousness do take place, like as in the case of the raw material and the Law of One. Matter of fact, before we even start, I'll show you something. Right here, right? Just to kind of go to show here, and let me make sure I get you guys sound and all that before we start jumping into all the different content as well. But you will see when a lot of these things like the raw material are taking place, it's incredibly ritualistic, right? Incredibly ritualistic. There was particular alignments that they had to have with the cup of water and the candles and the laid in the prone position and all this as they were channeling these messages. So they're incredibly ritualistic. They're almost conducted like seances. And anybody knows that when you're dealing with electronics too, that we're tapping into different dimensional aspects of electromagnetic energy, different frequencies, if you will, so we can pick up things that you can't hear with the ear and all that as well. That's where a lot of paranormal studies come into play. But yeah, when a lot of these messages and stuff are being channeled, these are altered states, that these people are in. So they're not, just kicking it, fully aware, fully conscious. They're tapping into an altered part of themselves. A lot of the people that study Jungian psychology believe it's a subconscious. I mean, the superconscious. There's a million different schools of thoughts and concepts on that. So we're going to start here, and we're going to play like this little excerpt about the origins of humanity and essentially its fall. So let me make sure you guys have sound. I think we're good to go.
You, nothing else to interact with. In order to experience interaction, to experience being with someone else, to experience play, the one divided within itself, duplicating the one, thus creating many ones, many beings within the one.
It actually starts right here, so I don't know if you guys can hear the subtitles. Let me know if you guys can see me and hear me too. If you're in the chat, it just helps me, a whole lot.
Still one being now in many parts were we, capable of pretending to be the other than the one, while still being one in harmonious consciousness. By vibration was it done, division, multiplication, and expansion of the one. Set into motion were vibrations throughout the universe. On it went dividing, multiplying, creating new aspects of vibration through the overtones of harmony and ripples of the interacting vibratory reflections, created this many new things, and also initiated the time and space. Each of us were the entity of the one, the entirety of the one, the dark.
So what he's describing, just to kind of take you where we're starting here. This is where it kind of kicks off, and then we'll jump into some of the different readings and all of that. This is like the primordial time where we're all connected still as one consciousness, but able to be free enough to go and create separately still, but we're not disconnected at this point that he's talking about, right? And this would be like the anti-primal triad, right? This is before humanity, before anything.
The light, the stars, the planets, all of us macrocosms of the one. In clusters, groups, we were in all directions. We being the entire universe, we then roamed ourselves as consciousness, as beings that cannot be described or understood by the present earth consciousness, yet describe I will try as best I can. Our existence was as close as you can comprehend in your present consciousness as beings of spirit energy, light, star groups, solar systems, the groups that be the foundation of the vibratory frequency in creating the physical plane of matter, the appearances there, and that which forms the bodies of that plane, unattached, ever flowing with the flows of the universal one, were we enjoying all the wonders of our new creation. Our consciousness both semi-separate from yet still one with the entire creation of the universe allowed us the experiencing of new and different things. But within this new creation were the material planes. These were the realms in which existed the most dense or slowest spectrum of vibrations. There were many material planes throughout the universe, the earth being just one.
And if you think about the concept of that, if you're high conscious beings and, you're able to coexist simultaneously in multiple, bands of frequency, the lowest being a vibratory state that slows things down so much that it becomes solid. Right, and that's what the earth was in essence to these beings.
story I'm about to tell is only of those who manifested in the realm of the earth, but others of us manifested in the material planes of other solar systems. Some are now of the higher consciousness. Kindred beings are they from other worlds, but some from other worlds are of the selfish and evil.
And if anybody that's kind of familiar with all the Law of One stuff, any of that, you know that they talk about, different polarities for beings, right? Service to self and then service to others, right? So positive and negative polarized beings. That's, in essence, what he's talking about the beginning of here.
When we came upon the world of the earth, we had no comparison, no experience of the like, no expectation of what would be. The first group of us to discover this material plane were in awe of the new sensations it offered. This first group or first wave of souls to materialize was the first to enter the vibrational spectrum of matter in the time-space of the earth. They experienced such pleasure from playing in it, they projected themselves deeply into matter in thought forms that were the most stimulating, the most sensational, those of the animal realm creations. In creating these bodies, assorted aspects of different animals were often combined to achieve what they thought would be very desirable blends.
And think about that too. They were in this realm of creation, right? Like this dream realm of creation where you can go take your fucking thoughts and animate those bitches in real time. They're not trapped by flesh. Okay? So they're having this wondrous time playing with this creative ability that they have, and they're like, well, let's just take a guy and a goat head and put it together, because they're experiencing all of this. And if you look at any of the tales too, of like the creation myths and all of that, which I hate the term myth, but anyways, any of the creation stories, you'll see, like especially in the Gnostic tales, that they brought all the animals to Adam first, right? And then he names them all, right? You see what I mean? So it's almost like this tale that we're hearing, this version of it, does kind of coincide with different creation tales. They descend into animals first.
Bird head, human bodies. Norse body, human head. Goat head, human body. Fishtail, human torso, and many, many more variations. Unfortunately, these ones, our close kindred, had no way of knowing that as soon as they hardened their thought forms into matter, becoming these creatures, that they would lose all awareness, all consciousness of most things beyond their new bodies and their immediate environment.
And that is something akin to what we think of whenever we're working with manifestation. This is something I haven't said in a long time, but I used to say it a lot, that people solidify their realities. They crystallize their realities, right, by believing something to be a certain way. So it's almost like they trap themselves with their thoughts and their beliefs, and that's what they're saying happened here. It's like they descended down into this animal, these animalistic spirits, right, which are carnal, lower desires, because they were able to experience flesh, the senses, for the first time, and their realities crystallized, right? They lost consciousness. They lost connection with the higher stuff, with, the all, with the source, with the connectedness of everyone.
They became trapped in these forms. The 7 parts, or chakras, were closely cutting off their contact of the full vibrational spectrum, and thus all their perceptions and interactions were thus based only on the limited vibrations they could detect through only 5 vibrational senses. These 5 senses could only monitor very limited frequency bounds of the full universal vibrational spectrum. And even in that, they focused on only those vibrations relevant to the material plane of existence, leaving these humanimals without any senses of the spiritual planes of existence. Cut off from the consciousness of the One, and thus the very universe itself, the humanimals experienced animal consciousness, but the beings inhabiting these forms were not animals, and originally of angelic consciousness.
See, originally of angelic consciousness, so this is like the story of the fallen angels here. They actually intermingled, human spirit with animal spirit. And that's kind of how it all started. And this became a rescue mission for the other angels, the beings of light, that were still connected to the source, that were still connected to the all, that were still connected to the one, to come down into this lower frequency dimension. Remember, we talked about how if it's able to become matter, if it's able to become physical, that means it has to be like a lower frequency, a lower vibration, so it can slow down enough to actually be whole, to be physical, to be solid, right? Okay, so now we hear the part of how these things were created, first from animals. And remember all the creation stories, Adam always names the animals first, right?
Combination of the consciousness that was meant to be of a higher form blended with the animal consciousness was a very inharmonious and disruptive mix. They lost the purity of animal consciousness and the purity of spiritual consciousness, so this was a new kind of consciousness that was foreign to the animal realm. This new consciousness was separate consciousness and was of a fixed focus nature and reverse polarity in comparison to the consciousness of the one. Intelligence was also severely curtailed in the humanimals, being similar to the intelligence of the types of animals they were modeled upon, but again, this was adversely afflicted by the negative effects of separate consciousness. Thus were the humanimals stuck in this limited plane in limited forms with limited intelligence and a new limited consciousness. They didn't fit in anywhere. They didn't belong in the spiritual realms any longer, nor did they belong in Earth's nature. Thus their introduction into the Earth plane was also disruptive and polluting to the very flow of nature. Those of us who did not project ourselves into matter were quite aware of the predicament and fates that had befallen our kin. From the vantage point of our natural etheric state of existence, we were still of one mind, one being. Seeing part of us in such matter-bound prisons as the humanimals had become trapped in was very painful. After all, the creatures were us, were our sister brothers, and their misfortune was our misfortune. In the terminology of some, they might also be called the first fallen angels, but they fell not of ill intent, but by virtue of ignorance of the purest kind. We decided to save them no matter what the cost. We knew we could only do this if we could function on the same vibratory plane as they. So we too projected ourselves into thought forms that could function within the realms of the Earth Mother. Led by the great being who became known as the Atlantean Amolias, then known later as Thoth, and eventually well known as Jesus, much later the second wave of our entering into the planes of the Earth Mother began. Careful to stay as beings free from the lower vibratory planes or hardening into the matter, we projected ourselves into the material plane with thought form bodies that were semi-etheric, matter but not matter. Thus were we still able to function on all vibrational frequencies of the universal spectrum, free to enter or leave the limited spectrum of the material plane at will. But most importantly, we were very intent upon maintaining our consciousness of oneness so that we would not fall to the same fate of the humanimals.
And to make a long story short, that's us, right? We're the ones that are able to still, in essence, communicate with all of the different, dimensions, frequencies, and vibrations, okay? It goes on to say, which I'm not going to play it all, but it goes on to talk about how even us and our newly acquired state that we, and I love the way it kind of paints the story too. If you really think about how biblically, the story is humanity's tricked, by, by these fallen angels and, all of this. And it's like, it makes it a way different story. It's like, humanity's actually the hero. Humanity descended down after these angelic spirits that descended down into matter, and it was to bring them back up, to make everything whole again, So it's really a lot cooler version of the story when you think about it. And it also takes away the element of like original sin and all that, because even the angels or the angelic entities that did commit this act by combining with animal spirits, right? They were doing it because they were having so much fucking fun, like creating. And I can see where that would actually happen if you're able to create limitless things, in this conscious reality. It's like through their ignorance, they got trapped in the flesh, So they go on to talk about how humans actually, they become selfish and, stuff too. Like, so it becomes a very, very small group of humanity that's left, still connected to this one consciousness, still connected to a higher state of being. And it's like, that would be you, right? That would be you watching, you listening. That would be you that is, trying to work on yourself spiritually. That would be you that knows that something is wrong and off with the world, right? Something's missing. You can't explain what the fuck it is, but something's off, something's missing. That's it. It's it. It's the mission that you were sent here to do. It's like a missing piece of the puzzle, and most of us are born. Most people don't even know that they've lost it now. But there are those of us that do come into this reality, and it clicks one day. We're like, fuck. That thing that I thought was off my entire life about this world, about this reality, that's it. I'm here to do more. I'm here for more. There's more to this place. And you start to redevelop or remember, right? Because you're putting pieces of something back together. If we were once a whole, the all, right? And then we became fragmented fractals of thought, trapped in matter, we're putting the pieces back together. And we're doing that consciously. So we've descended down to a very low, fragmented state. And piece by piece, we're building that tower back up, right? And it is like the Tower of Babel. It's like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's got to do with the cycles in time or the opposing force, because there is a duality, but it is like there is something that it feels like humanity has gotten to a very high degree, more than once, consciously. And you can look at pyramids and stories of Atlantis and all that. And we're going to be getting into all that today. This high degree of consciousness that we were once a part of, and it's like something is intervening, something is interjecting, and is it our own nature that is turning against us and keeping us from reaching the top, or is it the design of this reality to never let us ascend out of it? It's like, and this starts opening up a million different ideas, that one could have as to why things are the way that they are. So that is the mission. He who discovers the earth shall discover a corpse. Well, yeah, I mean, the earth, the earth is an interesting place. I don't see it as that now. I see the earth as a pretty special place that it's designed to be able to hold physical being, physical creation. It's like, if you look at the earth, it's like it's been specifically designed to have this reality exists within it. So it's very intentional. Something definitely, put all of this together. You can call it God, or you can say we did it, and our oversoul, whatever. But something has definitely created all of this to make it all work cohesively together. It all makes way too much sense. There's way beyond what we can see, and that's why I love tapping into things like this, because it allows us to step outside the limitations and the boundaries and the constructs of the world. The world is going to try to limit our perception and limit the way that we look at something, limit the way that we think about something, limit, what we believe or what we believe to be possible, And I find it that even people that claim to be aware, people that claim to be awake, people that claim to challenge the status quo still find a lot of this stuff hard to believe and a lot of it hard to accept. And I don't feel like it's because there's like a lack of evidence. I feel like it's like this lack of belief in ourselves. Like humanity still hasn't accepted the fact that we're that great, that we're that powerful, that we can do this much, that there's nothing we can't do, or there's nothing we can't tap into, or nothing we, and that we've done far more than we've ever, we ever believed we were capable of, and we're getting ready to be that again, and maybe even greater. So, hopefully, people will start to believe. I know a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about recently is a little out there, even for people that are, woke or whatever. But I promise you, like, people are going to start to catch up, and when they do, it's going to become common knowledge. This stuff is going to become common knowledge, and we're going to be the people that pioneered a whole new way of thinking and looking at the world, and a new way of understanding how it all works together too. So we're going to start here because this just kind of explains a little bit of it. And this is from Edgar Cayce's Story of Karma. Acceptance of karma necessarily includes a belief in reincarnation. Unless there is rebirth in a physical body, reincarnation, the effects of former lives, cannot exist. The material in the following pages deals specifically with conditions of rebirth, which does not logically belong in the previous pages. It does, however, add many interesting facts and gives some of the reasons as to when, where, and why we are reborn. No doubt there are many other questions we would now ask Edgar Cayce, if only we could. The first reading, 294189, explains much of the philosophy of reincarnation. And you're going to see as we go through this, and this is in multiple of the books, Cayce's readings and stuff, they're all numbered. So, like, he grouped them, into fucking, or somebody went back and grouped them. Maybe it was him, I don't know. But he numbered all the different readings that he did, and now they're like grouped by number. So you can go and see who all talked about Egypt, or you can go and see, it's very organized. The following information was sought by a group of individuals closely associated with Edgar Cayce after seeing an article in Los Angeles newspaper dated November 23rd, 1937. Arthur M. Hanks, who made a fortune peddling flowers in the Los Angeles financial district, left no will because he believed he would return through reincarnation and claim his life savings. He has been dead 7 months now, and today Judge Joseph Sproul opened the way for relatives to divide the flower peddler's $100,000 estate. Edgar Cayce's readings of November 25th, 1937 is a response to this question, presented to him in the opening suggestion. You will have before you the inquiring minds of those gathered here. Besides Cayce, Gladys, you will give at this time information which will help us to understand the laws governing the selection by an entity of time, place, race, color, sex, and the parent at any rebirth into the earth plane. especially the possibility of Edgar Cayce, present in this room, bringing through in his next incarnation memory of this life. If possible, we would like to be advised as to how proof of such memory can be established by leaving a record or money now that may be called for during the next appearance. And let's go here. Matter of fact. Hold on, guys. Basically, they go on to, we're going to start here before we jump into this one. But basically, that's just establishing that we all have karmic soul ties. We're all a part of karmic soul groups. And we'll show some of the different instances where multiple people were born in a family at a specific time. We'll get to that in a second. But basically, I just want to establish that in the belief of this is like the reincarnation. So we come back time and time again into, a simulation. A lot of people believe it's a holographic simulation. Some people believe that we're in a soul trap, that we're being farmed or mined, by aliens, higher entities, fallen angels, whatever, right? And that within this system, we come back in, live multiple lives. Some people believe that it's because of our karma. We're on these giant loops, in essence, where cycles, orbits, where we learn particular soul lessons, and as we overcome them, we get closer and closer, like circumambulation, to the true essence of ourself, right? Which is the source. It would be the all. It would be God, right? Thought. And each time through these life cycles that we live, we can create karma with other people that has to be settled. And that's why a lot of people will recur in multiple lifetimes, crossing paths. And then in some lifetimes, we get rid of karma, right? So, this is the Children of the Law of One, Basic Metaphysics of Science Magic. I need to warn you that this chapter, and this is from John Peniel's The Children of the Law of One, The Lost Teachings of Atlantis, and we'll get back to the Cayce stuff in just a second. But I want to give you the scientific stuff first. The Children of the Law of One, Basic Metaphysics of Science Magic. I need to warn you that the chapter is a bit more intellectual than the others. So other than the segment about crystals, unless you are a die-hard metaphysics enthusiast, you may want to skip this one. But before you do that, I'd like to say that this segment is the oldest name of God, and that name's metaphysical significance, to me at least, one of the most important and profound spiritual concepts I have ever found, and played an important role in changing my life. Before I get into everything else in this chapter, I want to say something about metaphysics. Many people think that metaphysics supersedes the law of physics, but the teachings say that this is not the case. True metaphysics should just expand on true laws of physics. Over the years, physicists have often discovered that some of what they thought were final facts or immutable laws of physics weren't so immutable after all, and thus not really laws. And in the future, more laws may be broken. But there are certain immutable true laws of physics. They are the ones that are aspects of universal law, and as such will always remain the same. These are the laws that any other law, metaphysical principle, or concept must be in harmony with and be measured against. Thus, if a person wants to learn and understand true metaphysics, there is no better place than to start than by studying and understanding the great laws of the universe. Here are quotes from some of the ancient texts that discuss the basic concepts involved. All is vibration. All vibration follows universal law. All gives, all receives. All loves. All vibration seeks its own level. To find any level, set forth the vibration. By law you will go there, by law it will come. Always is there a greater vibration. Always is there a lesser vibration. In harmony with universal law, all vibration moves as one flow. Interrupt the flow only to find in this natural order, thus does it go. And forever passing through, divided in two, receptive by the way of emptiness. The one calls to come and fill, giving by the way of abundance. The one flows forth to fill. Always then the war of the flow, dependence on that which is above. The object of dependence to that which is below. Two will repel, two will attract. Two will together interact. Look then to four, for all that need be, for all creation, vibration be. 1, 2, 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2 beget 4, thus opens the infinite door. Very interesting. And basically it's breaking down, the law of attraction here, right? How one energy begets another energy, and that when we set our energy in a particular direction, that's the direction we go. That's the direction we follow. When I was a young teenager, I was fascinated with metaphysics, in particular concepts about astral travel, unknown energy, and color and sound healing. I read everything I could find, and much of it was exciting and mentally stimulating, but I soon came to realize that one of the books gave any real facts about color or sound or their workings in theory. Sure, some gave information, but it made no real sense when you looked into it objectively and thoroughly. It was just metaphysical mumbo jumbo. You might read something like, purple is the color of Aquarius, Thursdays, and blah blah blah, and it is associated with the note low C. Purple can be used to heal the gallstones and blah blah blah, but how did purple do that? Why and what source was the information from, and could it be proven? And I was a musician, yet I couldn't understand what the heck low C was. Other mentions in the book indicated that they were not using the system of sharps and flats in the chromatic music scale, so it couldn't mean C flat. And there was already a mention of regular C in the books I read. I couldn't find one thing that a real metaphysician, a scientist, or would-be scientist could actually experiment with or use. I was so happy to find that the children had teachings that actually gave me the physics involved with these sciences and facts that made sense. With this information, I was able to discover many things like real colors associated with real musical notes. I could demonstrate it mathematically and prove it. I could make a device that combined the two, the real metaphysics at last. Many people have heard about quartz crystals, and most people sense that there is something very special about them. Friends and books may have made references to crystal energy and healing with them or related crystals and talked about how cosmic they are. I'd heard all that too, but it was almost way too vague and unsubstantiated for me. I wanted to know more, and I wanted facts. Crystals are amazing energy transmutators. They take electricity and change it to physical vibration. They can also do the opposite, take vibration and change it to electricity. Because of the transmuting property of crystals, they have been used by most people on a daily basis for quite some time, and many people aren't even aware of it. In fact, for many years, crystals were vital to the workings of radio and TV. The crystals transforms the vibration of electricity, changing them to a very rapid and specific vibrations in radio and TV waves. Those waves travel through air to wherever we are, and then crystals change them back to electricity. And think about that too, how fucking weird that is. That crystals and stuff, the way that they've been used in televisions and radios and all of that for so long, transmitting particular vibrations into your home and into you. You know what I mean? And they're able to take on specific energies. So it's like, in all of the dark symbolism and terrible shit that's put into TV and put into movies. It's like they're using, harnessing that power, to, in essence, amplify it and, take you out spiritually, and we see almost every time we see, and these going to cover quite a few different things. We see every time that spiritual technology, in essence, like some real deep understanding of the way that, the universe works and how we work on a frequency level and energetic level, that it's always being used to control, used to manipulate. Like this information that could be common information, common knowledge for people to be able to heal themselves, for people to be able to better understand themselves, just, the amount of conscious development that humanity could have as a result of having all of this knowledge at their disposal. The sad thing is that it's hidden from the masses. It's demonized. Anytime you talk about anything like this at all, channeling, crystals, divination, anything, right? Anything, it's demonized and it's like looked at as pseudoscience or as bullshit. Even in a lot of spiritual movements and shit like that, it's demonized as well as like occult and, dark shit, evil, to kind of keep you from, looking at it. And a lot of what it is used for has been evil, but it's not because the science is in itself. These are just the laws of how it works. Understanding them allows you to obey those laws or to break those laws, right? So knowing how they work doesn't make, it evil just to know how something works. What makes it evil is you're choosing whether to obey it or choosing to break it. You're choosing to use it for the good of everyone or choosing to use it to take advantage of others, right? So that lies within the person every single time. And the sad fact is that the people that's had this knowledge, had this information, have not been the best of people, and they've used it to exploit all the rest of us, and they've used it to oppress and suppress all the rest of us. Healing with crystals and vibration. All things vibrate and have different vibratory characteristics. Did you know that body parts, including cells, organs, have vibrational signatures? And I've talked about this, like everything down to symbols. That's their vibrational signature. There are healthy vibrational signatures as well as diseased vibrational signatures. And remember, disease is something that's distorted. It's dis-ease. It has dis-ease in its field or frequency. Understanding these scientifically and having the advanced technology to alter our body's vibrational signatures allows us to heal many ailments. In Atlantis, crystal technology was used for this, but the amount of knowledge and experimentation involved in cataloging all the different vibrational electrical parameters of every detailed part of the human body is immense. It staggers the imagination. Not to mention the technology involved in creating the right crystals and methods of applying them. The technology needed to properly use such knowledge is also incredibly advanced, but it was done in Atlantis. And the technology and knowledge was brought to Egypt, and then some of it to Tibet. It has been recently rediscovered by modern scientists, which we will get into in a moment. Atlanteans were very sophisticated crystal technology to heal, and many people internally remember or intuitively sense that this kind of healing did and does exist. So they try to use quartz crystals this way or go to healers who use crystals, but such crystals are wild cards. They are all formed differently and perform differently. And most who use them are deluding themselves because they don't know what frequencies they are actually dealing with or how to properly apply them, even if they had the right crystals for the task. Atlanteans had an entire science devoted to the understanding of the body's vibrations. And they had real scientific technology for using crystals to manipulate vibrations specifically. Atlanteans didn't just pick up a crystal at the local bookstore and try to start healing with it. Whether it was to be used for healing or powering a house. Atlantean technology gave them access to many different specifically designed crystals, each designed to specific parameters according to their scientific knowledge of making each one a specific tool for a specific vibratory function. There were thousands of specifically tuned crystals available for healing alone. And if you think about that, however the crystal is developed or made, and the frequency of the crystal, and how much of what ingredient is in it probably would change the way that it functions. The vibratory nature of the universe, everything in the universe is vibrating. Even light is vibrating. Different frequencies of vibration give us different colors. Just like the different frequencies of vibration give us different notes in an octave of sound. The so-called 5 physical senses, touch, smell, hearing, taste, and sight, are all biological sensors that, for the most part, detect vibration in different ways. While smell doesn't directly sense a vibration, it is directly sensing physical objects in the air that have different vibrational parameters. Each sense perceives vibrations within specific limited frequency bands. For example, through the sense of hearing, most people perceive vibrational frequencies in the 20 to 20,000 cycle per second range. We call that sound. The eyes pick up much faster vibrations that we call light. But these 5 biological sensors we use only pick up a very, very small part of the infinite vibrational frequency spectrum. There are other frequency bands that the 5 senses cannot perceive, which puts a big hole in our information about what is really there. And think about that. So we see 0.0001% of the electromagnetic light spectrum. We don't see fucking ultraviolet. We don't see infrared. We don't see none of that shit. Sound the same way. 97% of the universe hasn't even been discovered. We can't even see it. We're just blind and oblivious to it. But inside of our minds, in our brains, which our eyes, flip the images the right way up and all that. Our optical nerves don't even touch our brain. So there's a part of us that's actually making creation inside of ourselves. They even say that the consciousness is not directly connected to the brain. It's actually outside of the body. So there's something within us that animates us that's actually making all the real connections. That's actually part of the creation process that's connected to all of the frequencies, all of the existing space around us. Whether we can perceive it all with this layer of us, this dimension of us or not, we're populating multiple dimensional aspects. So when we go into channel, when we go into step into prayer, and we're tapping into the third eye. And remember, even Christ said, if thine eye be single, then thy body be filled with light. Right? We are then tapping into all those different dimensions. This is our magnetic pole of our body. So vibrationally, this is our antenna. This is our spiritual antenna to be able to perceive all those frequencies we can't with the physical senses. This is on the inside. This is in the quantum realm. This is connected to the heavens. That's why there's been such an agenda, through jabs and all that stuff to punch that motherfucker out, right? Graphene, magnetic, what does it attack? That in the heart, which is the seat of the soul. So it's like the Ta and Ba, both major parts of us that, that actually make us what we are consciously and allow us to connect to the heavens, are directly under attack in every aspect of our life. Now, we're going to look at illusions here, and then we're going to get into some of the different channelings. So, crystals are grown, yeah. And this is the thing, when somebody is channeling a message or tapping into something or dreaming or altered state of consciousness, they are jacking up in frequency, right? So in energetic frequency, consciously, they're able to perceive more. Remember, when we're in a higher or altered state of consciousness, we get a bird's eye view on the 3D. You know, we're able to tap into a higher realm of information. There's just more information up there. You know, and we have access to that information when we elevate our consciousness. And maybe that's what a lot of these people, like I said, I believe when we're channeling and divining and all of that, we're actually just tapping into, you know, our own God source that's within each and every one of us. Our oversoul, our higher self, our spirit is God. It's connected directly to God. It is a piece of God, and it's eternal, and it's all of us. You know, that is the oneness, and we all have access to it. And it's awakening that access, being able to tap into that access, and that's where, you know, these people get their visions, their channel messages, their gifts, everything. You know, the genius, all of it comes from that, you know, directly tapping into the divine. Okay. The true reality beyond our perceptions. Even the most solid physical objects are but atoms, and the parts and energy they are composed of, vibrating at various rates and various arrangements. These vibratory rates and arrangements of atoms are perceived by us through one or more of the very limited 5 senses of an earthly human body. We then process this sensory information, and in our limited consciousness perceive these atom groups as the things that can make up the world we live in, the things that are all around us. TVs, cars, carpets, skin, air, you name it. What we think all these things are is the result of the warped assumptions our brain makes, the assumptions being based on the very limited data we get from our senses about a certain arrangement and frequency of vibration of atoms. And atoms are just building blocks of the same one thing, the stuff of the universe. Thus, everything we think we see is really just an illusion, not its true form, just a conceptual form created by our brain. We put together an image or idea of what we think we're perceiving by virtue of our programming, expectations, experiences, etc., manipulating the bits of information we get from our highly limited senses. When you see the movement or vibration in a solid object, like you were just talking about, whatever it is you are seeing, it is because your consciousness is expanding beyond its limitations and you are glimpsing a bit more of reality. So our consciousness and our limited senses really create a perceptual handicap. It's even worse than that, Peniel. We are already starting with the great handicap of perceiving such a small part of the world around us. Then, to make matters worse, we process that information through the filters of our emotions and preconceptions. This all leaves us with a very inaccurate illusion of reality. And just a little change in the frequency of the vibration of atoms, how fast or slow they vibrate, and a molecule or a group of atoms can completely change our perception of what it is. For example, we know the slower vibrating molecules of H2O as ice, a solid. The frequency of vibration increases, we know them as water. A liquid, faster still, as steam, faster jet, as hydrogen and oxygen and gas. Then where? I don't know. As vibrational frequency increases, a more etheric quality develops. Something may even seem to vanish like steam. Think about that, dude. That's fucking mind-blowing. But nothing is ever lost in the universe. It just changes form. Sometimes the apparent form is changed by atoms joining groups or molecules, or what I like to call atomic cults. And think about that. It's changing its form from ice to water to gas, right? We change form like that in essence as we transition back into the spiritual realm. So to the naked eye, we're gone, is what he's saying. But we've just ascended into a gas state, right? Because we're water. You know, we're water. That is very, very interesting. when you think about it. So we are in an ethereal state, just like, everything we see on the earth. It's nothing's being destroyed. There is no death. There is no. Our minds are creating what we see down here based on very, very limited data and information that it has to conceptualize what this is. It's not even really. This is an artist rendering of, something far grander, but it's like an artist that's incredibly blind that's looking at it, It's absolutely crazy when you think about it. Okay. We're going to look at, these are some of the circulating files from Atlantis with Edgar Cayce. We're just going to kind of go through some of this and see what we can pull out here. Edgar Cayce, basically, he's got a lot of readings where he went through and talked about, the lost civilization of Atlantis. And this was an extremely technological society and civilization. Back then, we were in a high consciousness state, and that's why there's been so much of a focus on Atlantis, because it almost seems like we're trying to get back to that, and I feel like this is probably before the Piscean Age, and maybe even well before that, when looking at Atlantis. I don't know, honestly. I don't know how long ago it was. Some people say it was 12,000 years ago. Some people, sooner. Some people a lot, farther back. But we will see. The only impossibility is impossibility itself. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, bro. Absolutely agree with that. All right, here we go. These are categorized extracts from the readings. And you can see here, like what I was talking about with the numbers of them. See, male, 50, 27, 49, right? All right, so we're going to start here. Animals in Atlantis. Then, with the coming in or the raising up of Esai, with the change that had come about, began in that period when there were invasions of this continent by those of the animal kingdoms, that brought about the meeting of the nations of the globe to prepare a way and manner of disposing of, else they be disposed of themselves by these forces. With this coming in, and I'm going to go back to the audio we were listening to in the beginning, just to play some more clips from that, but not the exact thing we're listening to, but other parts. There's this thing where it's like the sons of Belial and all of this with the Atlanteans. So there's a very interesting thing about those who descended into the animal kingdom versus those humans that were still connected, right? And this division between them. So we'll get back into that in just a second, but we'll read this first. That way you guys know kind of like where we're at with it or whatever. But anyways, here we go. So then with the coming in, or the raising up of Esai, with the change that had come about, began in the period when there were the invasions of this continent by those of the animal kingdoms, that brought about the meeting of the nations of the globe to prepare a way and manner of disposing of, else they be disposed of themselves by these forces. With this coming in, there came then the first of the destructive forces, as could be set and then be meted out in its force or power. Hence that it's termed, or its first beginning of, explosives. Explosives that might be carried out came with this reign, or this period, when man or men then began to cope with those of the beast form that overran the earth in many places. And think about this too, like the story of like the Nephilim and shit, these giants and shit, these weird ass creatures that were fucking devouring men and shit. So it's like we've heard these stories more than once, y'all. Just saying. This ain't some new age weirdness. It's like always, it don't matter what religion you dive into. The occult, new age, Christianity, it's all the same shit. And that's one thing I feel like I've proven across the board year in and year out. And I don't know why people that claim to be spiritually aware and woke and have broken out of the matrix still are stuck in shit like Christianity and all that. It's mind-blowing to me. It's like, dude, you are, you're choosing to be restricted by this shit instead of like, but to each their own. Anyways, men then began to cope with those of the beast form that overran the earth in many places. Then with these destructive forces and the religious thing, it's not that you can't believe the books, okay? They all have a very broad and important conscious story in them. That's a truth. It's speaking to the subconscious. It's like, I can tell you the truth and you cannot listen to me, and most of you won't. Most people who watch this won't. They'll just skim past and go, this is boring. It's like, or this is evil or whatever. But if you still listen to it, I'm still speaking to your subconscious. So you're getting it whether you want it or not. And that's what they were doing with these stories. In order to preserve like the history, they became oral stories and what we call mythology and all that. And it's really talking about the history of mankind. From the stars and the earth and like the whole creation, the history of all of it. Because we descended down into these forms and got trapped and knew we would forget, but we had to create a fucking way to get back out. It's some genius shit when you think about it. Some genius shit. It's written on our fucking DNA because we wrote the story on there so we would be able to find our way back out at the end of it. It's like wild when you think about it, honestly. It's wild. They began to cope with those of the beast form that overran the earth in many places. Then with these destructive forces, we find the first turning of the altar fires and that of sacrifice, of those that were taken into the various ways and human sacrifice began. And remember, altars are fragments. They're divisions that are created in the mind. When we do trauma-based mind control, if we traumatize the mind, we sever those connections. Our brain fires electrical synapses, neurons connecting back and forth, which creates memory, conscious cohesion. It makes you a bad motherfucker upstairs. Well, if you can traumatize a person enough, you can sever those connections, break down their memories, and they'll have a memory of a goldfish like most of the population does today, right? Because they watch all that trash nonstop. They're all day, sex, terror, right? Fear, all of it, all day long. And remember, they're putting crystals and all this shit in televisions too. You think it's sound and light, it's like, it's in everything, these spells, these words. Because this is all part of this, this conscious trap, reinforcing, solidifying, crystallizing ideas on people to, So it's really weird that it, it kind of comes back full circle now that we're getting into this stuff. And this is why I love this shit. Because no matter where you go with it, you always can come back to the same place, They begin to cope with these beast form that overran the earth in many places. With these destructive forces, we find the first turning of the altar fires, right? The altar fires. When these altars are created in our mind, I believe that that's a reflection in the collective consciousness is churches, synagogues, temples, right? These are altars, Stonehenge, all of this, right? Those were probably some of the first altars that were created within the collective consciousness or the collective unconscious, right? Because it's a reflection of the whole the earth is, a reflection of all of us being created. And those, altars being created in our mind, these are also separations, like, because remember, reproduction is a huge part of this too. So it's like, we're also being divided down here too. So every time there's a separation, created altars arise. The altar fires that began, or the sacrifice of those that were taken into the various ways of human sacrifice began. And if you think about a reality to a duality, of good and evil, left and right, red and blue, up and down, solar, lunar, as above, so below. If you were trying to make sure you could maintain the balance of physical, spiritual, that's what sacrifice would be. It's like, oh, we got all this good, now it's time we give back. Right? That's where this concept come from. They were trying to balance the reality, literally, by offering their life for the life they were receiving. They knew the energetic exchange. It's wild shit, y'all. I'm not playing with you. Like, this is deep esoteric knowledge true in plain sight, because it comes through the subconscious, right? This altered state of Cayce's consciousness, right? He's in an altered state, so that access to that higher state of consciousness, if you're in a high state of consciousness, you can see it. It's like the fucking, the guy in the Matrix movies, it's like all I see is ones and zeros, man. Blonde, brunette, it's like you can now see the esoteric code, the illuminating code, and everything that comes out of that, Anyways, the altar fires into that sacrifice of those who were taken in various ways, and human sacrifice began. With this also came the first egress of people to that of the Pyrenees first, of which later we find that peoples who enter into the black or the mixed peoples in what later became the Egyptian dynasty. We also find that entering into Og, or those peoples, that later became the beginning of the Inca or Ohum or Aymara, in the building the walls across the mountains in this period. Those same usages of that had been taken on by these peoples, and with the same, those that made for the same in the other land became first those of the mound dwellers. And remember, a lot of the mound dwellers had the corpses of giants in those fucking mounds. Just saying. I would love to do a show in Serpent Mound in Ohio. I've been there before. It's really cool. It's got there's energy around those fucking places, man. Honestly, there really is. But that's what a lot of them believe, and there's been said to have been, giants' bones found in a lot of these mounds. You can take it or leave it. I mean, there was a quartz crystal. What are they called? Monolith at Serpent Mound 2 on the head, and it had been vandalized, right? And they'd taken it down. So it's like shit like that. I feel like one of the greatest things you could do if you're in love with this kind of stuff is get like a van or a bus and just travel across the United States, going to all those different sites, and seeing how it's here. And it's like, even when we look at the Celts and the Druids, and if I get time, we'll go to that today. I gotta work my way through all this. And you see how they were creating these spirals, which were circumambulation, and all these stories of the stars. They were saving the fucking knowledge for us now, right? To reignite our minds, to reconnect where those connections had been severed. It's wild when you think about it. It's like bringing us back to something we had lost. It's really crazy. Anyways, meaning we never lost it, but, old incarnations of ourselves, though, knew that this fall in consciousness was going to take place, so to save us, it's pretty wild. Anyways, with the continued disregard of those that were keeping the pure race and the pure peoples, of those that were to bring all these laws as applicable to the sons of God, man brought in the destructive forces as used for the peoples that were to be the rule. That combined with those natural resources of the gases, the electrical forces made in nature, and natural from the first of the eruptions that awoke from the depths of the slow cooling earth. And that portion now near what would be termed the Sargasso Sea first went into the depths, With this, there again came the egress of peoples that aided or attempted to assume control, yet carrying with them all those from Aeneas, that he gained through, that is for signs, seasons, days, and years. Hence we find in those various portions of the world, would even in the present day, some of that what was presented by those peoples in that great development in this, the Eden of the world. And now here is some of the questions here. Question: was Atlantis a large continent or a group of large islands? Answer: would it not be well to read just that given? Why confuse in the questioning? As has been given, what would be considered one large continent until the first eruptions brought those changes from what would now, with the present position in the earth and its rotation or movements about its sun through space, about Arcturus, about the Pleiades, that's of a whole or one continent. Then with the breaking up, producing more of the nature of large islands, with the intervening canals or ravines, gulfs, bays, or streams, as came from the various elemental forces that were set in motion by this charging, as it were, of the forces that were collected by the basis for those elements that would produce destructive forces, as might be placed in various quarters or gathering places of those beasts, or the period when the larger animals roved the earth. With the period of man's indwelling, let it be remembered, or not be confused, that earth was peopled by animals before peopled by man. Wow, that's fucking crazy. And that goes back to what we was listening to in the very fucking beginning. First that of a mass, which there arose the mist, and then the rising of the same, with light breaking over, that is it settled itself, as a companion of those in the universe, as it began its natural or now natural rotations, with the varied effect upon the various portions of same, as it slowly and is slowly receding or gathering closer to the sun, from which it receives its impetus for the awakening of the elements that give life itself, by radiation of like elements from that which it receives from the sun, hence that of one type that has been through the ages of mind, that give the sun as the father of light in the earth. This is kind of hard to read through, is it not? Or those of animosity and those of gathering together. We see throughout all the kingdoms, as may be termed, whether we speak of the heavenly host, or those of the stars, or of the planets, or of the various forces within any or all of the same, they have their attraction or detraction. The attraction increases as that gives an impulse, that becomes the aid, the stimuli, or an impulse to create. Wow. So same principle that works with today, right? Attraction increases by inserting the stimuli into certain things, which is controlling the future. Another gives that stimuli the impulse, the criterion of, or the gratification of, those influences in the experience of individuals or entities to smooth same. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on. That's a little hard to read there, guys. Now, let's go back here now. Let's pick up on this again. And we'll pick up on the rest of the story. And make sure if you guys are watching that you hit the like. They gave me fucking strikes on both my backup and my third YouTube channel. It's like I just fucking, they just tear me up anymore. Seriously, with the censorship. So if people wonder why I don't do much of the conspiracy shit anymore, that is why, dude. You know, that is why. I can post tarot videos on Facebook and get thousands of views, and then post one of these and get 50 views. You know what I mean? Like, and anytime I post something that's halfway, you know, conspiracy oriented, I get strikes. They've deleted my Discord, they demonetized my YouTube channel. This has all been within the last month. You know, so Crazy shit.
The manifestation was achieved more or less successfully, and as we become subject to the vibratory condition which affect this realm, we saw the numerological representations of the physical plane 2 and 5 appear in many aspects of our manifestation. For example, the beginnings of the 5 races occurred, and later the 2 sexes, each being having 5 appendages, 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, with 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs, 2 of many organs, and 5 fingers, toes on the arms and legs. Despite our precautions and great efforts, some of us still fared not as well as others, losing more consciousness and hardening more than others. Those who manifested in Atlantis with Amulius fared the best, but for many this was to be short-lived. Until this time we were composite beings, macrocosms of the One. Our bodies were not as they are now. Our male and female elements had not yet separated. As composite beings, we each had one body that contained both sexes, rather than the male and female bodies we have now. The sexes then being just the inner and outer elements, and our outflowing and inflowing parts of the whole being, those were soulmate groups, as they are called now. Each composite being had different numbers of parts and different number of soulmates, each part of being itself, but fully as one with the whole being. We were like beings in which planets orbit a star, or the atoms of matter in which elements of different polarity, male and female, are attracted to each other, finding a plane where they harmoniously function together within the whole as one entity, one being. As such composite beings, we existed in a state of unselfish love, constant flow, overflowing, giving fully of our life energies to each element of ourselves, within ourselves, and receiving within ourselves and without, in our relationship with the One. With each composite being also orbited, creating the even greater ultimate composite being of the One. Now, for the first time, some of us had begun to separate within ourselves, manifesting as individual bodies representing the polarity elements. Bodies of opposite polarities then came into existence, male or female, sex. The work of freeing the humanimals began. It was arduous and complex, but it proceeded. Well, at first, unfortunately, the contamination of separateness slowly began to creep in. We started slowly tasting many of the things that had instantly trapped the humanimals. Divisions began to occur between Atlanteans over opinions and desires.
Think about that. They said they had slowly began to start tasting the things that had consumed the humanimals, right? You think about the tales of like the Watchers, right? The 200, and how they teach man metallurgy and women how to paint their faces, and like, you know what I mean? And these were fallen angels. These were fallen angels. Or you think about the tales of the Anunnaki, right? And Marduk, and how he takes the Ajiji, and, you know, he's with the humans. Takes human wives. Very interesting. Gives you a whole new fucking way of looking at all those stories. Straight up. You know, the giants, the Nephilim, the mound builders, all of it. You're looking at it with totally fresh eyes. You're like, holy shit. You know, it makes sense now. It doesn't sound like a damn fairy tale anymore. You know, it's like, oh shit. When we first descended into consciousness, it's like we screwed up. You know, we screwed up. And that was probably like a lot of those planetary energies, you know, that did that. So, but which we are a part of as we were creating all of, you know, the cosmos. You know, Earth was this lower dimensional place where physicality could be created, and we got here and got trapped in animal spirit. Very interesting, I'm telling you. Shit is just, it's mind-blowing if you think about like all the stuff we looked at too, you know, pertaining to attraction and frequency and all of it. You know, it makes perfect sense.
The next symptoms of our disintegration was upon us, and this disease would eventually bring down Atlantis. Even in this higher state of manifestation, which we thought would keep us safe from the loss of consciousness that plagued the humanimals, some of us succumbed to the lure of material sensation. Like the drug addict would behave with an unlimited supply of drugs, we began to delve more into the indulgences of this plane until we were lost in it, drowning in it.
Like the drug addict would behave with an unlimited supply of drugs. So, think about it. We do that today. We chase feeling after feeling, emotion after emotion, high after high, low after low. We do it today, right? You're doing it probably right now. If you're watching on fucking Facebook or whatever, right? It's that dopamine hit, That's what he's talking about. To the point to where we lost our fucking selves in the senses, And one could even say that the animal spirit is our physical aspect of ourselves altogether. One could say that. Because we mate and we eat and we do all the same things as animals do, So one could say that that's the part of our nature that he's talking about there. And that we're still trapped in that, we're the humanimals, So.
In the frenzy of our addiction to physical sensations, we disregarded all our precautions and wariness. Soon our thoughts and actions had collected matter from this material world that surrounded us and hardened our thought forms, making us matter-bound also. Our consciousness simultaneously slipped, and our gradual loss of consciousness of oneness gave way to the new consciousness of predominant separateness. The consciousness of predominant separateness was foreign to us, a totally new experience. And along with this new consciousness came new emotions, some pleasurable and some painful, strange new things like greed, envy, lust, excitement, fear, and desire. Some of us vigorously strive to maintain a semblance of our consciousness of oneness, along with the new consciousness, and we were able to experience the emotions without being ruled by them. Such were the children of the law of one. But others lost or chose to deliberately suppress even a glimmer of awareness of the one. These beings became lost and enmeshed in separateness. Outside of the consciousness of oneness, they became subject to being tossed to and fro by the tides of emotional onslaught and ultimately became devoted to personal power and pleasure in this physical plane.
And we're just going to listen to another minute of this. He goes on to explain that these are the elites. These are the elites. So have the children of the law of one, these illuminated children that are trying to hold on to that connectedness of the one, that higher consciousness. They're not forgetting the whole purpose of being here is to save us from this fucking skin suit, It's to save us from being trapped here forever. So it's ascending our asses, back out of this bitch. And then you have the other ones that understand exactly what it is, but they don't give a fuck. They want to continue to descend down deeper and deeper and expose it and take from it. And
these beings became known as the sons of Belial, even if they were female. Take heed of the ancient warnings and prophecies about the Belialians. Lizard-like are they, not in apparent physical description, but in spirit form, in the heart, in the soul. Beware even now of your lizard kin, for they rule the world with greed and without compassion, while maintaining appearance of good and righteousness. As men and women do these sons of Belial walk the earth, model citizens, successful leaders who are the envy of the uninitiated. While some appear disquieting and strange to the eye, look not to see the ugliness of the Belialians with your eye, for some are handsome to the eye. See you will not their true lizard-like appearance with your earthly eyes. See their true nature you will only with the inner eye or in the glimpses from the corner of the eye. When this division came within the people of Atlantis, many things went awry and turmoil began. To function harmoniously, beings need to have omnipresence. Their vision must include the whole picture. But when the attention is fixed and focused in the reverse polarity of separation, all that is seen are parts of the whole picture. Those parts that are not filtered out by the illusions of separate consciousness. It is a limited view at best, and often is a lens distorted by emotions. Without awareness of the whole picture and the guidance of a coordinating force, actions become uncoordinated with others. To understand this better, imagine how well your present-day body would function if each limb did not have awareness of what the other limbs were trying to do, or if each limb wanted to do different things from each other, no longer working together as one. Now imagine further. Imagine this lack of coordination keeping your eyes, ears, fingers, tongue, and mouth from working together as a team. Now consider...
Yeah, I heard that too. I picked up on that too. Even if they were female, which is incredibly interesting to think about. A lot of like the Knights Templar and the Divine Feminine worship, like Mary worship, Madonna worship, shit like that, and the Divine Feminine, and how in the New Age movement, you know, all of that is about the Divine Feminine, even if they were female. You know, so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you got something else out of that, but very interesting that it, you know, and we see a lot of the, there's other schools of thought, too, that really demonize the fuck out of the Divine Feminine as well, and call it like an, you know, all-devouring force and shit, and like the creation stories of Ra, in Egypt. So you get like a very similar kind of school of thought. But he's breaking down these lizard beings, right? It's a lizard mind, which is the masculine side of things, in essence. You know, that's the thinking mind. You know, it's a lizard brain that actually does all the talking. You know, that actually tells the lies. That's our, you know, our survival. And, you know, it's even said too, you know, you look at like serpents and things like that, like they can unblinkingly watch, you know, devour their own young, or watch their own young be devoured. You know, it's like the story of Kronos eating his own children, and, you know, there's a lot of that when we, you know, look at like, just basically the whole system of darkness and selling your soul, and how that is still prominent today. You know, that archetype or that group or class of people, and these are the, you know, he says these are the elites, and to the uninitiated, you know, they're hot shit. Like, they're hot shit to the uninitiated. Why is that? Why would they be a big deal to the uninitiated? You know, you gotta ask yourself that. It's like, because once you fucking have been enlightened to the shit, there's nothing impressive about it at all. You're like, dude, they're totally fucked. You know? They're totally fucked. You know, they're really fucked. And I feel like there's a price that even comes along with like looking at a lot of this, that it can desensitize you. It can turn you dark. That's why what is the, you know, the saying by Nietzsche, you know, it's like about staring into the abyss, right? Or him that, like, you know, fights monsters, to be careful that you don't become a monster yourself, because when you're staring into the abyss is looking back at you, right? So it's like, when we look at the occult, the hidden and the mysteries, there's always that chance. And I told you, I feel like fucking 99.999% of the people that get into this stuff get caught at the first degree. 33 people in the chat get caught at the first degree, right? Because that's, and that's that circumambulation process, because it's like, that's where they meet their darkness, and their dark side kicks their fucking ass. Like their shadow beats their fucking ass, and they never get past that part. And I'll tell you what, I don't care how. And a lot of people who think that they've already done all of this and think they've been enlightened and think they know some shit, they've usually never went deep enough down. Like, once you go deep down, you really meet your own darkness. And I'm telling you, you've lived a lot of fucking lifetimes, and you probably accumulated a lot of darkness, a lot of karma, a lot of wounds, a lot of trauma. And that shit comes back up, when you take that real journey inward. And that's what you're going in and do. It's like janitor, mop and bucket, cleaning up all of the old shit you've been dragging around for God knows how long, how many lifetimes, and you see the true essence of who you are. And a lot of people never snap out of that. It's Medusa, they turn to stone, turn to stone. They're solidified into this disconnected state, this self-serving state, And I'll be honest with you too, it seems like the more that you try to manipulate reality to work for you, it's like the more it does something to you. It's like the more you need it to work for you. Because, we're not built or supposed to be wired that way. Everything's supposed to come from within us. We're supposed to, bring value to things. I guess you need both. The purification is intense. It is intense. It is intense. And notice a lot of the people that have really done some of that shit, like the experiences they have, they're really common. They're really common. Whether that's opening up some type of, psychic gifts, within them. Why does that always happen? What and some people, it manifests in so many different ways, but it's like people they're able to perceive so much more, tap into so much more. They have this unparalleled belief in self, and it's not like a self-worshiping thing. It's like believing in self because they know what's supporting them. They know the force that's behind it all. The God force. It's like crazy. And you can't have somebody who has a real grasp of any of it, that wants to stay stuck here forever. It's like, I feel like there's got to be something with those, and maybe that's what their bloodlines are about, guys. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe those, powerful bloodlines and all those genetics that we hear about with the elites. Maybe they're trying to preserve that Nephilim bloodline. Maybe the rest of us we're not that, which is not a bad thing. But I feel like they do, look into a lot of our bloodlines too. So there is a genetic aspect to this too. And notice what a lot of the agendas, the modern agendas that we see rolled out now, they attack genetics, right? The messenger RNA stuff and all of that, and then the graphene and and how it's magnetic. It follows, metaphysical understanding. It's not just, and science is like the guise that it's covered in, but these are metaphysical attacks. Even like looking at, television, and like I said, with frequency and crystals and all of that, these are metaphysical attacks. You look at newspapers and media and all of that, and the gematria codes and the word magic and spellcraft that's being used. These are metaphysical attacks, that the powers that be perpetuate on all of us. Maybe this is something inherent, in the fall of, all of that. The fall of Atlantis. This is from Edgar Cayce's site here. The Law of One from Ancient Egypt. Okay. An ancient study group meets at ARE headquarters in Virginia Beach every Tuesday to discuss Cayce's readings in Egypt circa 10,500 BC. Recently, the group studied the Law of One based on the rich information found in the readings. According to the readings, this became a time of enlightenment, which influenced the entire world and ages that followed, including the present. The readings refer to it as one of the most momentous occasions or periods in world history. In the succeeding generations, as thought is turned into those channels, the same will be as that in the beginning. For, as seen, none are being drawn into the purpose of the establishing of this more close relation of God's truth in earth, other than those that first established, same in the land now known as Egypt, in that momentous period in man's understanding. And that's Cayce reading 254-42. The readings weave an intricate story of Edgar Cayce as the high priest Ra-Ta, who established temples in Egypt based on the Law of One. The temple of sacrifice was similar to a hospital and spa that cleansed and transformed the physical body using surgery, changing thought patterns and activities, and through diet. The temple, beautiful, is compared to a university or center for the arts and used vocational guidance for training based on what was the best for each individual. Education was for the service to God and country. Spiritual truths and cosmic laws were part of the curriculum, along with meditation and prayer, always relating to the thesis upon which everything was based, to know more of one's relationship to the creative forces or God, and the manner in which this could be expressed in relationships with others for the creation of a harmonious and peaceful world. Here began the preparation for that later called the Great Pyramid, to preserve the understandings from this time for future generations. It was designed in relation to the position of the stars and contained prophecies of humanity's spiritual evolution. Hermes was the construction architect and Isis served as the advisor. That's so fucking funny. Hermes was the architect, right? Which Hermes he's thought, right? And Isis was the advisor, which is like the spirit, so it's masculine and feminine. Yeah. Then began what may be truly termed the first national or nation spirit of a people's. For with the divisions, rather than this causing and dispersing of ideals or a dividing up of interest, it centralized the interest. Ra-Ta was preparing for this very spirit to manifest itself in the way of the national emblems, the national ideas that stood for the varied activities of not only individuals or groups, but for the general masses. The great teachers of the world were called into Egypt to correlate their understandings of the law of one God. They unified the teachings for the creation of a harmonious and peaceful world. This period became the foundation of the Master's teachings. Emissaries were sent to distant lands to spread the truth and establish temples. The law of one is based on living the fruits of the Spirit, not just understanding, but gaining wisdom through daily practice and application of the laws. This ideal is synthesized in the phrase that we may take or make manifest the love of God and man. Let's don't forget the thesis or the key for which all this understanding had came, that there might be a closer relationship of man to the Creator and of man to man. There was the absorbing of the ideals and ideas of the priest Rata, or the turning of the ideas into ideals, through the seeking to comprehend, to understand, and then practically apply the tenets of the Lord thy God is one. The highest service an entity may render to the creative energy, and the answer of the divine from within, comes in being mindful of the sons and daughters of men, that many may become one with the creative energy, yet no self to be self. As was given by the law of one during that sojourn, and as is the experience in the present, God is within, and the manifestations of his love and his mercy in and among his fellow man may be the best known by the acts, the deeds, yea, even the very thoughts of man, as in relationships to his fellow man. And to know more of man's relationships to the creative influences or God in the manner in which he may manifest same in his relationships to his fellow man. Now, this is all connected, and you see this goes on and on too. All of these referring to the law of one. When the peoples were first seeking the rule of spirit and of the knowledge of the inner self, the entity gained much through service and sacrifice, then as a living example rather than as a rule or a regulation. And holding to those tenets of the law of one as to the fruits of the Spirit, that is, as you would have another be, that be thyself. Do not ask another to do that what you would not do thyself. Make concessions only to the weak, and defy the strong if they are in the wrong. What about that? I love that one. For God is not mocked, and whatsoever a person soweth, that must he reap. Only in the fruits of the Spirit, as of long-suffering and patience, and mercy, and brotherly love, and kindness, and gentleness, may the true meaning of life's experiences and the purposes of life, and in association with others, be understood. Very cool. I'm going back to the beginning here. Let's see if we can find the one. Here we go. All right, and this is from Law of One. Trying to find where he says, they ask him if he's from the Egyptians. The vibrations may be purified by simple turning to the circle of one in the verbal vibration while doing so of the following dialogue. What is the law? The law is one. Why are we here? We seek the law of one. Why do we seek Ra? Ra is a humble messenger of the law of one. Rejoice then and purify this place in the law of one. Let no thought form enter the circle we have walked about this instrument, for the law is one. So see, before they're even jumping into this whole raw material or anything, they're conducting a fucking seance. That's what this is. They got a circle around this bitch. They've got the water and the candle on her head, the book's open, they're doing, and like I was saying, whenever we're tapping into here, we're actually tapping into like quantum realms, okay? And that's our spiritual antenna. So that's why they have her eyes and ears and all that, sensory deprivation. That way she can really tune in. So the instrument at this time should be in trance. And like I said, these are altered states of consciousness. So once we are shifting out of our physical state of consciousness, which is the main state of consciousness, very naturally we're altering the consciousness, right? We're going into another place inside our fucking dome. Now, the instrument at this time should be in a trance. The proper alignment is the head pointed 20 degrees north by northeast. And I want to say that this has something to do with the way that the sun rises and sets. And I don't want to say like for a fact, but I believe it does. Like wherever they were positioned, it was probably because that's where the sun was rising or setting. This is the direction from which the newer or new age distortions of love light, so they were pointing towards a specific star then, okay, which are less distorted, are emanating. And this instrument will find comfort therein. So they were pointing her at a specific star or celestial alignment or body in the sky. I would say the sun, but who fucking knows? This is a sensitive instrument, by which we mean the distortions which enter her body, mind, spirit complex come from any of her senses. Thus, it is well to do the following. And this is where they go through the ritual part. Place at the entity's head a virgin chalice of water. Right? Water is a conduit, right? It's holds memory. The chalice probably copper or sterling silver or something like that, or gold. It's usually some type of metal that is like acts as a conduit. To the center, the book most closely aligned with the instrument's mental distortions, which are aligned mostly closely with the law of one, that being the Bible that she touches most frequently, because it's your belief in God. So just like, you can't join a lot of cults and shit unless you believe in God. So the Bible you touch most frequently is usually used to bound you and shit too. So it's like you swear on the Bible you touch most frequently or whatever. In this case, it would be like the Holy Bible if you grew up Christian or whatever, right? To the center, the book most closely aligned with the instrument's mental distortions, which are allied most closely with the law of one, that being the Bible she touches most frequently. So that's the way she's going to picture angels and the heavens and all that. So the other side of the Bible, a small amount of scent or incense in a virgin censer. And I know biblically, and most schools of thought spiritually, incense represent the prayers of the saints ascending up, and they derive from different herbs and things like that. And a lot of witchcraft uses herbs and incense as well, because it charges the air with certain elements, if you will, to attract in certain things. So say you're trying to magnetize something that is made up of iron, which translates to frankincense, which translates to orange, which, it's got in every dimensional aspect, it's got its own incarnation. So, its own planet it's connected to, its own star, its own color, its own sound, its own all of that. And incense a lot of times draw in certain things because they charge the air particles. For ritual, for things to be spoken and things like that. And remember, they are speaking too. To the other side of the Bible, small incense, virgin censer. To the rear of the book, symbolizing one, open to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, a white candle. And white is usually for, cleansing. The instrument would be strengthened by the wearing of a white robe. The instrument shall be covered and prone the eyes covered. We feel that though this is of complex of activity circumstance, it may seem distorted from a purposeful teach-learning experience. These elaborations on the technique of trance will ease the mind distortions of those about the instrument as they perceive improvement in the instrument's distortions with regard to fatigue. We add only that if these teach-learning sessions are held during time and space during which your sun body does not light your room, that it is best to call the instrument before the lighting of the illuminatory mechanism. I am Ra. I leave you in the glory and the peace of the one Creator. Rejoice in the love of light and go forth in the power of the Creator. I enjoy. We leave you, Adonai. And very interesting, time and space which your sun body does not light your room. That it's best to call the instrument before the lighting of the illuminatory mechanism. And in a lot of schools of thought, I believe I talked about this in one of the most recent episodes where we talked about the X factor and the different rays from the sun, that our primordial bodies actually exist in the sun. It's like an astral body or whatever. It's like our eternal body. And a lot of people don't even know they have it, or they never use it. And the lighting of the illuminatory mechanism, I would wonder if that would be, something to kind of trigger awakening or shift consciousness, whether that's, drugs or who knows what they were doing there, But very interesting, very interesting. That's kind of cryptic right there when you think about it. In your true mind, your will is to see what is happening within on the outer vision. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Instrument is a tickler in the mind, and space is where you will see it. Yeah, well, it's very crazy, guys. I'm just saying, we're tapping into really different spaces and places than a lot of people believe we are, or even believe we're capable of doing. We're going to go to this too. We haven't did this yet. This is the sons of the law of one. Thereby referred to the Sons of the Law of One. This group oversaw a long period of technologically elevated social development that has no, and this is Atlantis, I believe, has no history of our planet. Advanced bioelectrical healing techniques were also described in the Atlantean readings, only to be misunderstood for so many decades. The unfolding revelations of the information age offer a full restoration of knowledge. The modern scientific fields of biophotonics and photon resonance have resolved the quantum trapping dynamics employed in the bioelectrical QI healing arts, whereby advanced yogic practices involving meditation and isometric exercises in underground temple chambers enable the charging and discharging of bioelectrical forces from the bodies of highly trained individuals. Reading 270-15. Excuse me. In the one before this, we find in that land, and when the division arose in the land, now known as Egypt, the entity then among those who were finally chosen to supervise the educational forces of the period, especially as pertaining to the records kept in the physical application of physical conditions and the spiritual application through religious rites of the temple's setup. Hence the entity found much dissension through the office imposed on same for whose that were the counselors of the ruler. Found the entity disfavor with these, as the entity also found disfavor with the attendants in the various temples, for the entity came to be known as the spy or the telltale. For either the king The priest was the one in charge of the school and the temple. The entity then came, then the name Du, and the one before this, we find that the period when the Atlantean peoples were near the turning of the higher civilized forces, as applied to the application of physical and material elements to the use of man. The entity then the one that was first able to generate that power, since known as the latent force and applied physical beings, or electronic energy as later called. The entity then won in power, position, and gained much in this experience, being able to serve through service given, and the urge as seen, the love of position and power, and innately the love of those bioelectrical QI healing instruments that would serve mankind. During the Atlantean era, bioenergetic practices were applied for both destructive and constructive purposes, for warfare and healing alike, while other related wireless technologies were also applied by Atlantean engineers, including the broadcasting of live voice and video transmissions or television. Isn't that fucking crazy? They're literally saying that they had TV. The height of Atlantean technological advances also influenced the parallel development of an opposing social polarity, composed of those who rejected the spiritual teachings in favor of idol worship, known as the sons of Belial, or Baal. How about that? Belial, implicated in each of the three cataclysms of Atlantis. Wow. The Hebrew name Baalim means false god, referring to extraterrestrial reptilian humanoids and their use of interspecies hybridization involving forced human-animal fornication, fetal removal, and advanced genetic manipulation to degrade the genetic expression of their followers and integrity of humanity. The remote temporal context of the development of this advanced psychoacoustic society in the Orion Pyramids of Giza has been purposefully suppressed by U.S. government agents who have redacted vital information and entirely altered the precise temporal references given by Cayce under trance. The Associations of Research and Enlightenment was established by the CIA as a front company designed to control the revolutionary information reaching the general public through the psychic readings of Edgar Cayce, especially regarding the vast technological implications of advanced scientific information given by the source concerning Atlantean psychoacoustic wave genetic technologies and the Tesla gravity motor. Acting in the covert capacity of military counterintelligence contractors, the ARE research staff and ARE press have disseminated falsified data in the form of fabricated reports, redaction or alteration of the actual reading dates, locations, and participants, as well as alteration of ancient time frames given in various life readings. Damn. Unfortunately, Edgar Cayce's own sons, Hugh Lynn and Edgar Evans, have both been fully complicit in cooperating the falsified past life readings data for the CIA-organized ARE. They have both been longtime employees of various U.S. government agencies. Wow. Of course, paychecks received from such government jobs account to government bribery checks for continued complicity in criminal falsifications of Edgar's work. What do you think about that? Likewise, the 4666 series of readings, which is 4666 series of readings for the Tesla gravity motor, has been falsely attributed to some obscure inventor with a portion of a patent to his name, while the 4666 readings were clearly given for a well-known inventor with a great many patents associated with his name. Of course, Edgar Cayce himself had no recollection of giving the reading at all, but relied entirely on the stenographer for his own comprehension of the material being given by the source through him. The deceitful purposes of these falsifications involved not only the theft and obfuscation of the intentions of Nikola Tesla, but also served to undermine the soul group that reincarnated to support the development of healing technologies during the modern era through Tesla's work. Deceptions that had effectively deflected public interest in the resonant physics of Tesla gravity motor for 85 years are now giving way to the expanding awareness of the vibratory physics of acoustic levitation. During another life reading, Cayce identified the application of forces from nature for construction purposes and global wireless power transmission through the activity of cosmic rays upon the temple structures. The lost ancient knowledge was restored through wireless inventions of Nikola Tesla. Wow. How about that? These were special formulations of synthetic stones with piezoelectric and pyroelectric minerals, as well as ferromagnetic metals such as nickel and iron. A remnant of the Atlantean reconstruction or the Orion pyramids is a broad section of basalt causeway that survived the catastrophic cometary impacts that finally submerged the large island groups of Atlantis. Wow, so they used basalt. Like, a lot of people don't know that, but back in the days when we would talk about the Planet X stuff, we would talk about how basalt can actually take on a fucking crazy amount of heat, and that if you was actually going to, any type of, surface that you wanted to be on in case of like asteroids, shit like that, nuclear bombs, anything, fire, like basalt was it, because it would take all the heat, So that's very interesting. That is very fucking interesting. Especially like when we look at, the cataclysms back in the day, and there was a lot to do with fire, and, all of this was used in the electric elements of the stones that were used, which probably explains how they were levitated, right, to be put into place and all of that. It's really, really starting to piece together the pictures of ancient culture and ancient civilizations. And I feel like it's only, if we continue to go down this rabbit hole, which this is a never-ending rabbit hole, maybe we'll get back to the origins of, of who all of us are, or where we all came from, and have a better understanding, because it's like every time we lift up a shovel full of dirt, to me anyways, when I uncover a piece of everything, it's like I know it resonates with me, and it's like it's this inner knowing. I'm like, that's true. That's true. It feels right. It feels true to me. Hexadecimal code over a Ouija board. Magic numbers used in computer science and programming. Magic numbers are often used as constants. Flags used to indicate specific conditions or behaviors. Wow. Very interesting, Todd. Very interesting. I did not know that, or I didn't know how to explain it like that, but I absolutely agree with that. So, the trance statements of Edgar Cayce are strongly supported by the presence and state of preservation of the existing portions of the large basalt causeway that once encircled the pyramid temples. In fact, the extreme hardness and density of Giza basalt pavement blocks exceeds that of all of natural basalt. Petrographic analysis of the Giza basalts have not been made available to the general public because they are consistently identify the artificial origin of these basalt pavement blocks and geopolymer stones that are identical to the synthetic basalt formulations used in construction of the Ohum pyramids of Ecuador. About 30,000 years ago, pyramid builders in all parts of the world began to apply advanced metallic formulations for preparing synthetic stones such as magnetic granites and magnetic basalts. exhibiting finely ground particles of exotic minerals and metal constituents such as quartz, tourmaline, pyrite, gold, silver, nickel, and iron. Accurate construction dates for the artificial basalt causeway of the Orion pyramids have been withheld from the public, for they offer definitive confirmation of the Cayce history. Artificial pyroelectric stone was directly named as the Atlantean Firestone, invented by the Atlantean leader Ajax of Ode. The entity then gave the people the manner of use of the universal forces as may be applied by the way of mechanical construction in a physical plane. How about that? A close look at the interface between the limestone bedrock and overlying basalt pavement reveals significant details concerning the advanced construction techniques used at the site long ago. The relatively soft limestone bedrock of the Gizeh Plateau was not carved flat before the harder basalt layer was added to resurface the causeway. The fact directly implicates that the basalt surfaces blocks were poured into using synthetic basalt casting processes that had only recently been discovered. So they're saying they poured those bitches into place. Wow. Very, very interesting. And say that this too was found, these techniques were found in other fucking parts of the world too at the same time. It's just showing you consciously we were in a way different space back then. Way different space. Paleo-Sanskrit name, Ra-Ta, and the social narrative offered by Cayce during the life readings for himself provides a minimum lifespan of Ra-Ta approaching 230 years, achieved through the periods of regeneration and the HHO plasma chambers of the Great Pyramid. How about that? The critical commentary given by Cayce under trance had even injected some mirth by referring to himself in his previous life as Ra-Ta, along with the Atlanteans as being fleshpots who undermine their own spiritual growth by carnal associations. Damn. The Paleo-Sanskrit name Ra-Ta means granting or endowing, referencing his organization and global dissemination of the tenets of the Law of One and the resonant temple practices that elevated the people to spiritual realizations that have not been granted to those priests of our time. Mention of the advanced geometrical knowledge of the Atlanteans, as well as the physical appearance of various individuals involved in the temple services and the style and coloration of clothing worn in the period, was made in a short series of trance readings for the members of a small prayer group in November 1939, some of whom had prayed with Ra-Ta in the Temple Beautiful. The priest was an individual who had received inspiration from within, and realizing that such an influence or force might be given to the others in their search for why and what were their purposes in material life, he then sought out one who might foster such a study in materiality. Thus, from those places were a portion of what is now called Carpathius. He came with a great horde or a great number, as to individual souls, numbering 900 in the land now called Egypt. Why Egypt? This had been determined by that leader or teacher, not physical leader, but spiritual interpreter or guide, as a center of universal activities of nature, as well as spiritual forces, and where there might be the least disturbance by the convulsive movements which came about in the earth through the destruction of Lemuria, Atlantis, and in later periods, the flood. Which is interesting because there's been different schools of thought that's talk about like Israel being the center of the world, and then different parts, different pole shifts, other areas being like the center of the world, the spiritual center. I just find that to be interesting, like the magnetic center even maybe of the world, right? This had been determined by the leader or teacher, not physical leader, but spiritual interpreter or guide, the center of the universal activity of nature, as well as spiritual forces where there might be the least disturbance. Okay, what were the factors, you ask, which determined this in his mind, and from what concept did the entity gain that knowledge? Was it just a concept, just a revelation, just a physical analysis, or what? When the lines about the earth are considered from the mathematical precisions, it will be found that the center is nigh unto where the Great Pyramid, which was begun then, is still located. So they're talking about geomancy, right? The ley lines of the earth, the grid, earth grid. Then there were the mathematical, astrological, and numerological indications, as well as the individual urge. You say, then such an entity was a god? No. You only say that because there is a misunderstanding of what were the characters or types of spiritual evolution as related to physical evolution in the earth at that period. As an illustration, merely illustrating now, it's hard for an individual, no matter how learned he may be, to conceive of the activities that exist only 3 miles above the earth. Why? Because there are no faculties within the individual entity in the present capable of conceiving that which is not represented within his individual self. Yes, but the individual of that period was not so closely knit in matter. Thus, the activities of the realms of relativity of force, relativity of attraction in the universe were an experience of the souls manifesting in the earth at that period. See? Thus, we find that the experience of individuals of the period seeking for understanding as to the evolution of the souls of men might be compared to the minds of individuals in the present who are seeking an understanding as to man's use of physical or atomical structure in his own relationship. Then the individual of that experience or period was not necessarily one other than a soul or entity seeking knowledge as to the relationship of that which would sustain and gain for man the abilities not only to continue physical evolution, but the spiritual or soul evolution as well. Such a one then was Ra, or Ra-Ta. Then, with his entrance into Egypt, with the proper place, the proper relationships with that activity, which was indicated by the willingness of the people of that land and the greater extent to be led into those activities for the physical as well as the mental and spiritual developments of the period, we find that there were the activities in which the king with his council found fault with the actions of the priest, because the indications that there was not an adherence to that demanded of others in his own life or experience. Then there entered what may be termed the desire of a group to impose the teachings on the people, not to teach man by experience, as was the priest's desire, what relationships he must bear in every extent and phase of his life to his fellow man, that he may understand through same the phases of the mind, the phases of the soul, yet see it only in physical reaction. So did many of those who were in authority in Egypt. Hence there came the banishment of the priest, with the companion as well as many numbers of those who chose to be banished with the Abyssinian land, who were attracted to the natural intent and purpose of the priest, not only those of his own peoples, but many of the natives. Then there followed 9 years in banishment, as well as the periods of the uprisings of the natives in rebellion, and also that of the king's own household and the Ibis, as well as the entrance into Egypt and the peoples of the Atlantean land, which had begun the breaking up, as had been told by that entity, the priest. When the Atlanteans in the experience began to influence the spiritual and moral life of the Egyptians, under those turmoils which had arisen through the rebellions as indicated, there came that desire, that purpose, especially on the part of the natives, as well as those who had been adherent partly to the tenets of the priest, that the priest be returned, that there might be a better understanding. For the native leaders especially realized that their own activities or representation in the spiritual, moral, and religious life would be destroyed if there was the adhering to the tenets being presented by the Atlanteans. And, as might be termed in the present, some indicated that the priest alone would be a match for those activities of some of the stronger or more forward Atlanteans, for they had brought with them, as had the priest, many things, or individuals, or entities that were without purpose, or merely automators. to labor or to act for the leaders in the various spheres of activity. And as the natives found, such beings were being classified or judged to be such as many as the natives of the land. Hence, there were overtures made to the ruler and to those in authority with the same that the priests be recalled, and that thus he had entering those of the activities were begun related to many of those who were in association. And you know what? So they brought the priests back because the Atlanteans come and they were like bringing that dark ass shit basically to Egypt, right? So they kicked this priest out for trying to, enlighten people to the things that he had known. This Ra-Ta priest, right? Endowing people with enlightenment. They kick him out of the city, and then all of a sudden the Atlanteans, after the land starts breaking up, and which was prophesied by this very same priest, start coming and bringing evil and darkness there. Then they call for the priest to come back, and so. Thus it had been indicated, there arose a need for the temple of sacrifice, where entities, individuals might offer themselves for the purification of their bodies, that they might first be channels through which there might come entities, souls manifesting in the earth with the entire activity of body, mind, and soul. It was the same intent as had been the purpose of the priest, and the choice of the individual through whom the pure race, the pure activities of a better purpose might be made manifest. This, to be sure, caused a great deal of discussion and dissension among the leaders of those groups of the Atlanteans. Thus, as had been indicated, there was the need for the priest to enter into that period of meditation, of setting himself aside, purifying through continuous prayer, continuous seeking, continuous opening of those forces. And as we have indicated, there was then much less of that interference that arises from carnal forces as manifested in material associations. So they were a different type of being back then, on the whole. They weren't as solidified in the physical reality as we are now. So to them, they could still conceive what was going on in the ethers naturally, because their consciousness was still, in essence, a part of that, an active, aware part of that. So they were tuned into things that we can't even, that we're working to be tuned back into now, right? Just naturally. They weren't so solidified down in a lower state yet. But some were still, very selfish and driven by this stuff. Thus, we had the priest rejuvenation, or the turning back of an age, as it were, or those conditions which would hinder the activities, and this began the period in which even members of the present prayer group prayed and meditated with the entity, not in companionship, to be sure, but in their own desire that there might be a unifying of the purposes, the desires. And with these expressions, there were those who chose the activities that were set in motion for the purifying of their bodies, that there might be the purifying of physical conditions which had been and were being affected by emotional forces or the carnal influences about them in the experience. Such activities might be best expressed or explained by comparing the same to the present hospitalizations, where there might be operative measures used for the removal of such as tumors, breaks, growths, or the like. So they were like doing psychic surgery, in essence. They would go to these temples, and these priests would have, whether it was like changing their fucking diet, crystals, putting them in trance states, like these psychic surgeries they would perform on them, because they seen it all as conscious, or like sicknesses in the auric fields. Isn't that so crazy? That is so fucking crazy. After the purification, which took some 6.5 years, and think about 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty in the Bible, 7-year tribulation, 7, being that number of God. There began the classifying of services of individuals and their activity through the various offices that were undertaken during the period of the greater prosperity through the Egyptian experience. For there were not only the adding to the monuments, but the Atlanteans aided in their activities with creating of that called the pyramid, with its records of events to the earth through its activity in all of the ages, to that Aquarian age in which the new dispensation is to come. An intriguing reference was made by the source to that Aquarian age in which the new dispensation is to come. Indications from extraterrestrial contactors support the functioning of the pyramids as being inextricably linked with a binary stellar period of 36,666.66 years, corresponding to 3.33333 solar cycles of 11 years. These figures were known to Atlantean astronomers, whose sacred calendar system was inherited by the Mayan culture that marked the solar maximum of December 21st, 2012. With the elapse of their Baktun long count cycle, the remaining one-third of a solar cycle amounts to a period of 3.66 years before the magnetic reversal and galactic superwave arrival in the latter months of 2016. Holy fucking shit. That's crazy. That's when, I'll be honest, that's when I woke up and shit, for real. It was the latter months of 2016. Trump was elected. It was this major triggering of consciousness back then, if you guys remember. Dispensation of life force of the pyramids that enabled the high development of thought forces or mental forces during the reign of Ararat. Ra-Ta and the Atlanteans in Egypt was related in another life reading given by Cayce for a woman who had been the interior decorator of the pyramids of Giza. So, he basically told these stories from 100 fucking angles. I don't know, wow. Crazy shit. We've been going over 2 hours here, so I guess I'm going to
consider the chaos.
Wrap this one up here. Very interesting, very interesting to see the different perspectives. I'm going to probably do a part 2 on all this stuff. We're going to look more into Atlantis and Edgar Cayce, and we'll actually jump into the Great White Brotherhood the next time that we get into this. There's so many fucking cool books on all of this we barely touched. You see all where the Law of One, its connections to Egypt, its connections to Atlantis, and we see some of the greatest minds, that have really existed, spiritual leaders, that have kind of, solidified a lot of these stories too. And we see when you compare them, to the Bible and to all the different, religious schools of thought, things start to line up. They really do. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Please hit the like, share this, comment, subscribe, donate and support. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Patreon. Book your own personal tarot reading. Check out the tarot videos. And I will see you guys next time. And we're going to get into the Great White Brotherhood and all that good stuff. So, love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace.